Morning, gentlemen. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to what I believe is AMA number 20. The primary topic of this AMA will be genome mining. There are some major developments right around the corner. I'm joined today by CEO David McDonald. How are you doing on this morning, my friend?
Yeah, not too bad. Had a pretty good weekend. Nice and relaxing.
Fluff
Yourself?
birthday?
Yeah, Fluff birthday was good.
Love to hear it. Myself, I feel like I'm getting a bit of a cold, but I'll be damned if that stops me from alpha hunting with my friends on this beautiful Monday morning.
Love it.
We're also joined today by Chief Tech and Product Officer Hal. First off, welcome back. How you doing, mate?
Cheers, man. Really good. Can I get an audio check? Because I'm on a different headset. How's my audio? Check one.
Yeah, good.
That's good.
Nice.
It's
an exciting week, Ice, and driving in. I've just come into the office and driving in this morning. I'm just pumped, man. Like what we've got to reveal this week is pretty special. Let's have it.
So fair to say the music then matched your energy.
Yeah, and the caffeine levels.
All right, so we're just over 24 hours away from the beginning of mining cycle 1 to look at Gen 2 Brains, a great opportunity for our community to complete their APHA teams. I'd like to start by talking a bit about that as well as an overview of genome mining, how we think this first production cycle has gone. So who would like to kick us off?
So I think it's gone really well, actually. We've had massive amount of participation. What was the number that we ended on? As far as total ASTO committed? Anybody got that figure?
I think it was over... actually, no, I'm not too sure, David.
Okay.
But it is my understanding that 84% of people who participated in the ASTO Discovery Auction are still locked in. Is that
wow.
correct?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Okay. Thanks, Soda. Cool.
To the rescue. Thank you.
Awesome.
So should we talk about the streak multipliers that kick in over the different cycles to sort of further reward our long-term stakers?
Yeah, so we have the so we wanted to first of all reward the LBA participants because the mining cycle started because the mining cycle started in the middle of the LBA, and B because the participating in the LBA and providing liquidity in general provides a service to the community, and we wanted to make sure that we had a way of rewarding people providing that service. So we started off with the liquidity bootstrap auction or Astro Discovery auction, participants getting a 10% boost to the Astro energy that they produce. And then we had suggestions from the community that we allow all liquidity providers to be able to be eligible for that 10% boost. So we scrambled at the last moment to get that set up for everyone, and that those calculations, I believe, are done at the end of the cycle. Is that correct, Hal?
Yeah, that's correct. We go through to the very end to calculate how that all washes up. And so, yeah, at the end of the first production cycle, you'll see how your LP performed in terms of ASTO energy.
Ooh. Awesome.
Cool, that is exciting. Personally, I really want to talk about APHA Moon, but I also do not want to be fired for saying something that I'm not supposed to. So what can we say about the mining process, or is this just something we want the community to discover organically?
Yeah, so I guess we can start talking about it because it's coming out tomorrow, but we're not going to go into like reveal all the secrets, but tomorrow is the mining cycle starts. The As the story goes, the Gen 2 brains are made from aephorite, which is found on Aether Moon. And as we've heard reports from the Seekers, that Aether Moon has been discovered, but it's yet to be mapped. And as part of the genome mining mechanic and experience, you'll be mapping out the Aether Moon, and there'll be unique brains that you can discover on that journey as you go through that process. So all will be revealed tomorrow, but I'm really excited to start to see people interacting with the world that we're building, and the mechanics that are built out in a protocol mechanics that are built out in a gamified manner.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Hal, do you have anything to add just in regard to a genome mining overview?
I mean, look, I'm just self-aware in the fact we've been so deep in actually building this thing. I have no idea what I am and aren't allowed to talk about. So I'm just being very careful over here. All of it, though, I'm pretty amped for it. It's going to be really exciting to see how people start to interact and start to solve some of the interesting edges and meta games within this. It's an exciting experience.
That it is, wouldn't feel right if I didn't try to dig a little for some alpha with these Gen 2 brains coming out. Got me thinking, do we think that other ecosystem projects like Fluff, Party Bears, maybe Crypto Walkers, do we think that they may eventually have a use for a brain?
Yeah, absolutely. That's been the goal all along. And we have a whole lot of use cases in the pipelines for all of the above. So, and any partnerships that we make with anyone along the way is the intention is to include altered-state machine brains in those use cases. So we've got some exciting stuff coming along the way for each one of those, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and the important point here is that an important point there is that we don't intend to be the bottleneck for the adoption of this protocol, and what we're doing is really leaning into the use cases, the early use cases that we're taking on ourselves, to really understand what those primitives need to be within the platform, and that's really coming into focus. So we'll be excited to be able to look at open sourcing and delivering some SDKs around what we're researching and discovering and building, so that we can start to enable these other projects and any projects to jump in and start really exploring what AI gamification is, and we can start to kick off that mass adoption of this, what we see as a paradigm shift in gaming, basically. So we've been working really hard to make sure we get that right, and we'll be putting a lot of our focus on making sure that we can actually get some tools in the hands of our excited community, and they can start building and kick this whole thing off.
Cool. Is there any chance you can move a little bit closer to your mic there, Isaac?
Is this any better?
Not really.
Maybe I'll talk a little louder because the microphone is literally touching my lips.
Okay, cool. Sweet.
All right, I'll talk a little louder. Exciting things to come. Audience, if you want to put your hands up to ask any questions, and then one by one we'll move you to the stage. And in the meantime, was there anything else you guys would like to cover off?
No, so the team's been working real hard on getting this out, and alongside that, continuing work on the next legends in partnership with Non-Fungible Labs, the AFA release, and some upcoming pretty chunky partnerships. So we've got a lot on the go at the moment, but pretty excited to start to see more stuff rolling out. This is the first sort of major release since we did the mining sequence, beginning of the mining sequence. So you should be seeing a regular cadence of stuff coming out of the team over the next few months, which is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I just echo that. Like, the only additional message is just out to the team and anyone that's listening. We're just amazed at the amount of quality and awesomeness you're managing to kick out. Like, the ASM team is absolutely crushing it right now. And you're about to see a big part of that work come down the pipe, but a lot of the work is happening further upstream as well. And we're just, it's pretty exciting what we've got coming downstream. So big shout out to all of the team. You guys are amazing.
We've got a bit of a shy audience this morning, but fear not, because we have prepared some questions that we had on Twitter. So I'll just get stuck into these in the meantime. This first question says, can I use my second generation brain for Aiden and the next Legends as well as for AFA?
Yes, simple answer is yes to that one. So brains are meant to be interoperable. The genome mining spec, genome matrix spec that the Alter-State Machine protocol has been launched with is meant to cover a whole number of use cases, mostly angled towards gaming and metaverse. And there's a whole bunch of exciting things that will be available for those brains that are already in the works. So the intention is that you can use all the same spec brains across all the same use cases.
No, cool. And I'll just remind our audience to, if you do have a question, to put your hand up and I can get you up on stage. The second one, is the second generation brain that comes with the ATA membership removable?
Yes, it'll just be a normal Gen 2 brain.
Cool. This is, what is the minimum amount of ASTO required to stake for mining?
What is it? What is that right now?
That's what's put down.
Yeah.
The minimum amount of, I think I understand the question, but the minimum amount of ASTO required to mine a brain is calculated at the end of the production cycle. There's a really good Medium article that you might want to just put in the notes for this AMA for people to jump on to just refresh how that works. But essentially, yeah, it's calculated on the total ASTO energy produced within the production cycle, divided by the number of brains available in that mining cycle.
Cool. So we've got someone on stage now. Vulture.
Yeah, Vulture.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Excellent. So I have two questions. The first one is just kind of about what you just mentioned in mapping the moon. I guess these kind of like rare brains that you might be able to find when you map the moon, are they Gen 2s, or can you give any more information as to what makes them kind of special or interesting?
Yes, so they are Gen 2s, but they have different visual properties to start with, and there are some other differences about them that people might be able to sort of pick up on and discover.
Gotcha. All right, that's very cool. And I guess just how the moon all works into the AFA player kind of ASTO claim. Is there like any kind of lore hints or anything of how maybe after we map the moon, perhaps there's other things that our AFA characters can do on the moon, or is there any kind of thing you can tell us in terms of that?
Yeah, exactly. So the moon's actually been built out in different sort of zoom levels, and we're going to get better and better sort of resolution of it over time. And you'll start discover some familiar and unfamiliar locations as you interact with the map. and some of those locations have the potential to provide unique interactions. I don't want to give too much away because half the fun's discovering. So,
got it. So I guess we can expect some sort of gamified claim in that way, if there's like a map we interact with and that kind of thing, or is it really going to be I have 10 APHAs, go get however much ASTO I am allowed, or is it kind of like you have to pick where they go or something like that?
So the claim's going to be gamified to begin with, but it presents us with an opportunity to bring in other kinds of gamified processes into the portal through interacting with the map as it is now, and then as the resolution gets better and interacting with it in new and interesting ways. So it's kind of just it's the beginning of how to interact with the APHA world altogether.
Oh wow! So it's like the introduction of the map. That's very cool. I guess any idea on when we're going to get closer to APHA? I know I'm very excited, obviously, to get my ASTO energy working and getting the Gen 2s popping out. But yeah, obviously that's kind of the next big thing. Is like the claim as well as I think it's like making your actual team. Is there any kind of not necessarily a timeline, but I guess is it like soon after or like in part of the genome sequence? Is there any hints as to when that kind of starts?
Yeah, we're not too far away. We've started the internal pre-alpha, and the team is testing out their teams at the moment. We're just working through that process, and the next one will be sort of a closed alpha with external parties. The first release will be to Genesis holders, the sort of closed beta. And we're not far away from that in the process. We're in the next step right now.
Well, I'll step off the stage now, but yeah, thanks everyone for all your hard work. I know that's probably a lot going on behind the scenes, and yeah, I'm very excited to keep seeing this train rolling down the tracks. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, bro. Cheers.
Thanks, Vulture.
Thanks, Walter. PJ, welcome to the stage, mate.
Hi, Isaac. Hi, gang. Good evening. Good morning. I've got a few small questions. The first one is you were talking about these surprise Gen 2 brains or the gamification element. In the last AMA, you said that you didn't need to do the gamification element if you didn't want to, and you could just say, mine me a random brain. Does that mean if you do that you miss out on the opportunity of getting one of these rarer Gen 2 brains?
So not necessarily. You might stumble across them still, and if you want to start to sort of refine your searching patterns, you can find more of them. So that's kind of how it's going to work. So initially, with none of the map revealed, nobody's going to know where they are. But it's kind of like a gold rush mechanic, where there's am I revealing too much? We're saying, but where there's veins of rare apherite throughout the moon. So if you really want to go sort of on a hunt, there's some strategies that you can take to refine your search down to places where they are.
Enormous.
You could just look out. Sorry, David. So you could just theoretically look out, go random, and end up discovering an element of the moon with a rare Gen 2 brain, or you need to go through? Yeah. Okay. Cool. But obviously there could be strategies which help you to increase your chance of getting one if you're smart about it.
Yeah, so it's kind of modeled off how you would prospect for real, and then once you find a location, sort of following that vein to where it's rich and
cool.
you can discover more. Yeah.
And so does that
Yeah.
mean then there's a benefit in phasing your brain claims? If that's such a thing.
Yeah, so going wide and then going narrow.
Well, I just mean
what
like
you mean?
so. Let's say you have enough AE stored to get say 20 brains, and you could just say, right, mine me 20. I don't know if this is how it works, and it might just become clearer tomorrow. Like you said, it might just be like mine 20 brains, or you could say mine one brain, and with the information you gain from that, you say, right, now mine another brain, or now mine two brains. Am I on the right track of how you might do that?
I mean, you basically, the way that the gamification is designed, the more attention you pay and the more energy you put into, the more attention you put into your strategy, the more likely you are to yield some of the cooler stuff on offer, I think. But it doesn't mean
talking together as a community is definitely beneficial.
Awesome.
As well as sharing information.
That was meant to be my really quick question leading into my other one. So you can drop me off the stage and bring me back on if you want. But I just, we talked a couple of AMAs ago about the Prime news and how you weren't in a position to kind of give any information because you were waiting on third parties to give you some advice. I just wondered if you'd had an update on that.
Yeah, so we got a legal opinion back. We're trying to re-engineer the mechanic in a way that we can still do the same thing, but it not end up as a security. Because the last thing we want to do is have this really cool mechanic, but then turn the assets into a security.
The initial legal opinion was kind of the way you were thinking of doing it could put people at risk of it being a security, but you were then trying to do a workaround.
Yeah, it's enough of a risk for me to be concerned about. It wasn't sort of set in stone that it would be, but I want to de-risk that process as much as possible, and I think that's definitely the responsible thing to do. So we're working through a slightly different design that de-risks that altogether. It's a process. It's such a process, but if you don't do it, then it's a little bit irresponsible on your community. So, but it's coming along. I think we've got a pretty nifty design that has a good chance of de-risking that process, but we've just got to go through that with the lawyers.
Cool. So it's still good. It's going to take a while still before you're in a position where you think that can come out.
Yeah, I think we'll be working on that for a few weeks. Yeah.
Cool. So the one last small question then. So there's been a lot of talk in the community about, obviously, do you use all your AE that you've managed to generate from the current cycle, or do you hold some back? Because we've talked in previous AMAs about there being additional uses potentially for AE. I was just wondering whether, based on your expected timeline, which is obviously subject to change, do you think any of those other uses for AE are likely to come during this current window, or could we go full send on this AE, knowing that we might want to hold some back on this next set of AE we might get?
I think so. When's that one coming out? September, I think, is the next one I can think off the top of my head. That mechanic that will use AE, but it won't use a lot of AE.
And so that will be within this site that you won't have any fresh AE claimable. So there is it is a sensible strategy to hold back some AE from this generation or yielding phase, whatever it's called.
So when is the end of September? You'll be generating AE then, and by end of September we'll be in a new generation cycle from tomorrow. So that's a hard one to answer. Whether it's worth holding anyway.
Yeah, I'm thinking because if it's 60 days, I guess that's taken us up to middle of October that
Yeah.
we would, before we get our next lump.
Hmm.
So I suppose on that basis, potentially, it's fine. I mean, obviously everyone might have different strategies. I'm sure some people will choose to use it all. Some people will use none, but, I just wondered whether you had any info without it being kind of telling people what to do, whether there's anything that where people would kick themselves for doing one particular thing. So it sounds like potentially, even if it's a small bit, people might want to hold a small bit back.
Yeah, I don't think so. A is not designed to be, particularly punishing if you don't use it, because you can just continue to generate it, and it's meant to increase participation in the protocol, but not sort of drain your wallet of all your ASTO or anything like that. So we want it to be, nice and easy decisions for people to use, but it's for the community, for ASTO holders. So the mechanics that we release that use AA are not meant to be, there to accumulate ASTO, right?
Yeah.
I think,
So am I right in at the end of September, this other mechanic, you saying that if you didn't have any fresh AE then, you'd still be able to participate in that mechanic in, say, mid-October, end of October? Okay, cool. It's not a one-off. It's not like we're mining. It's not like we're minting a project using AE and you've spent yours, therefore you can't mint any of this particular project. You're not saying something like that.
No.
Okay, cool.
Not.
So you're not gonna kick yourself if you go full send on Gen 2 brains now and then have to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks before you be able to participate in the next mechanic.
No, and this mechanic's designed, designed to, so you can just you can use AE as it's kind of generating in a way, so it's not.
Yeah,
okay.
I think the important message there. The important message there is for like any significant event like mining, there will be the respective production cycle. And so little bits and pieces and little bits of functionality that David are talking about, are minor uses. But for any major uses that, like you said, you might kick yourself for missing, there would be a respective production cycle.
Good, cool. Okay, thanks, guys. I've taken up a lot of time, but I really appreciate it and great work as always. Look forward to seeing what happens tomorrow with the mining info.
Awesome. Thanks, PJ.
Cheers, thanks.
See you, mate.
Tails.
Welcome to the stage, Chasing Tails.
Good morning.
How you going?
I just have a couple of questions. When we're talking about rarer apherite and mining, special or different brains, can you just clarify that doesn't change, say, performance or anything like that? It might be more an aesthetic thing, or is it something that could enhance their, I know we don't like to use IQ, but the genome matrix, I guess.
So it is primarily an aesthetics thing, and it doesn't give you an outright advantage, but it might give you an additional opportunity for strategy, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't.
Elaborate?
I'm wondering if I should reveal this because part of the fun is the discovery, is to sort of look into what's different about them.
Let them discover, David, because it's exciting, and that's part of the fun.
It was just more a concern that some people had of if it was going to change performance, you know what I mean? And we've always sort of said that there wasn't an advantage, in gameplay as such.
Yeah, definitely not. So we're not doing that. But it is an advantage if you want to take advantage of it. But it's an advantage just like the secondary market has advantages if you want to research and jump on Alpha Farm and look at things and choose things. So it's not an inherent advantage, but it does consolidate some decision making, I suppose.
You also have to remember that these brains are interoperable and therefore interpreted within different game spaces differently. So having that those unique and slightly higher diversity in the collection through those unique sort of tiers and rarities, it gives game designers another mechanic that they can choose to lean into and use or not. Yeah.
Awesome. And just like in process for like tomorrow and the next bit, gas fees and things like that, just from a, is there going to be a gas fee at some point for the actual minting?
Yep, there'll be a gas fee for minting, but the team is working on making sure that that's as tiny as possible, and they're getting pretty good at that. So yeah, keen to get people's feedback, but it's looking all good.
And that'll be
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Can't wait for Root Network, just saying.
And
Inbound.
Thanks, Suda.
Thank you.
and then one last question I had was, do we have any indication about when we can actually start training brains? Like, do you know if we'll be able to start training brains before the end of all 3 mining cycles?
That's currently on the roadmap. What do you reckon, Hal? Will it be before or around about the end?
I mean, if you're talking about training brains for AFA specifically, yeah, it'll be somewhere towards the end. But honestly, we are in the middle of making sure that that AI gamification experience is correctly balanced and has all of the analytics, etc., around it for us to make it all the experience that we want it to be for you guys. So it'll be somewhere off the back of the mining cycles. TBC.
Cool. So if you don't have enough AE this round, don't stress. You're not missing out on training straight away, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep.
Cool. All right, that's all from me.
Cool. Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks, Tails. BTC Hornet, are you with us?
Hello. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening.
How's it going?
Very good. It's evening for me. I had some questions. They're all kind of scattered. I wanted to start off with the Moon gameplay, the Moon game that's you're releasing tomorrow. Is this optimized for desktop, iPad, phone? What's the best medium for it?
So I think the best medium for any game is PC, but that's just me. But I believe it's mobile responsive, and I've tested it on my phone, and it's looking pretty good. Hal, have you got any specific comments on that?
Yeah, I would just say desktop would be the optimal experience, but you should be able to enjoy it on any device.
Okay. And then how long will we have to play this game to earn the brains? Is there a cycle time period?
Yes, so the cycle is in 3 epochs, and this is the beginning of the first one, and the epochs are 60 days.
Okay.
Each. Yep.
Okay.
But the AFA Moon will hang around, and it's a place that we can begin to introduce new protocol mechanics and new gamification opportunities into.
Okay. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit. So on the AFA game, you won't be able to train your brain in game. during the in-game experience. The training will be in gyms only. Is that also true for the next Legends? Will the brains be trained in gameplay, or will you also have to just spend time in gyms for training?
I think there's a few concepts that we're conflating potentially, so we'll just get it clear. The training experience will be integrated into the game experience, but if you're talking about the game experience as the Aether Moon gamified protocol mechanic that we're releasing tomorrow, the training experience won't be integrated into that experience until the release of the intelligence mining and Aether game. Does that answer your question, or do we need to sort of?
I think it might have been more about the live learning, which is as a mechanic available to us to put into different games, and it's a really interesting one. I think from an experience point of view, that one of the reasons why we use the gym architecture is because it enables us to provide training in hypertime and across multiple environments at the same time. So within a relatively small period of time, you can see big, meaningful changes. And that suits certain types of gameplay where you're wanting to make big sort of strategic changes to your team and see what the outcome is. I think passive learning, so real-time learning is better suited to other sorts of games and environments. So if you're playing a slower paced game where you can sort of see incremental changes over time, small incremental changes, then the real-time training is more suited to that kind of environment. So it's about picking what sort of method of training is best for that, the pacing of that particular game, and you'll see use cases that you do use real-time training, and you'll probably see use cases that use a combination of both as well. So it depends on the game, but I think with something like Aether, and this could be subject to change and feedback as people play the game. But with something like Aether, you're probably wanting to make bigger changes in shorter periods of time on your team.
Okay, that's a lot to absorb. Let me just go to my next question. When are we going to learn more about the parcel characteristics of our brains and how it? And I think for Aether, I guess Aether, since it's the first game, when are we going to learn more about which parcel has to do with which traits of gameplay?
So we have a what do you call it? We had the genome matrix bootstrap event planned. So that's actually almost ready to go before genome mining, but we put that on hold to get genome mining through the delivery pipeline, and that will kick off now after. So it needs to happen before the game is released. So as long as we get it in within the time period between the release of Gen 2 Brains and the game, then it'll all be set up and ready to go. But we want community participation in making those decisions around which quadrants are responsible for what attributes, essentially. So that's coming soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And then, so it seems like with Genesis Brains, so the market's going to be flooded over the next several months with Gen 2 Brains, and for those that have Genesis Brains, the value, future value calculation is in a couple of parameters. The map of your brain, and then also, of course, the splicing of your brain in the future. How far off is splicing? Since that's probably the primary value attribute for a brain in the near term. When will we be able to start splicing?
Hal, do you have a comment on that one?
Yeah. So I'll avoid the when question, but I will just talk about the intended value of the Genesis brain collection, right? And for me, access to what we're doing, early access, is one of the key value props there, because as David mentioned earlier, the first beta version of the game will be released to Genesis asset holders, and so getting a first peek and a first run at that experience is an example of where access, as opposed to just the functionality of the brain, holds a lot of value. Splicing is built into the protocol, but is something that needs to have careful modeling put around it, and that has to interact with not only the game that we're looking to release very soon, AFA, but also the other games that are dependent on these interoperable assets. So there's a good thesis for how this should be, but we want to make sure that our models are correct and everything pans out and is balanced in the way that it needs to be for that to be successful in an enjoyable dimension of the game ecosystem.
Okay, great. No, that was a very useful answer. If I can I have two more questions. I just want to move on real quick. You had an exchange with PJ. I wasn't sure, you were talking about de-risking and securities. Was that a discussion about the reverse claim mechanic on APA characters?
No, that one's fine. We're talking about the mechanic that we were designing for primes. We're just going through the process with the lawyers around making sure that the rewards you get off the back end of owning a prime is not going to be considered a security.
Okay, I don't have that problem. So,
yep, neither.
So, so on the reverse claim, when have you? I keep asking this question. I'll ask it again. What is your timeline for the reverse claim?
So we wanted the reverse claim to be there for people who wanted to participate in intelligence mining. So I want to get that out before people can start training their brains for specifically AFA. And also we're going to make sure it's timed right with the market as well, and what's happening with Asto. So we don't want to leave a massive window between that and sort of buy pressure for the Asto token. So it'll be before intelligence mining, or around about the same time as intelligence mining.
Yeah. The reverse claim feature is basically all but built, designed, built, and ready to go. But as David said, it's about timing that and getting that time just right. So so hold tight. We will get it right. Okay.
And then last question, David. I think you're a seeker. You're in Camp Seekers. Is that correct?
That's a good question. So. ASM is, if we were to put us on an alignment chart, is true neutral in this little war going on. I myself, I think there's enough information out there in my tweets that might hint towards my true alignment on this one.
Okay, I'm not really sure I understood that answer. Are you Team Seekers or are you Team Goblin?
that was entirely my intention.
Okay, well,
I am Team Seekers.
Well, I have a different question then. It's on your Twitter. Your name is David McDonald. On your Twitter, your DMCD_NZ, but your name is David McDonald on your Twitter account. And I noticed that Goblin text people use, what's the font? The Goblin font?
Yeah, the glitchy font, whatever it is, yeah.
The C of your McDonald has got that Goblin font. So it's like you didn't want to go out all Goblin, but you wanted one character in your name to have the Goblin text. Can you explain that, please?
I don't know. I might have been corrupted by some goblins. Who knows?
Okay.
That's interesting. That's there.
David's
Fascinating.
known to go goblin mode from time to time.
I might be
Okay.
playing both sides. You don't know.
No, I get it. That's good. But I'm assuming you're 95% secret. Then.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. We can call that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, mate.
Thanks for the questions, Hornet. Is my microphone better now?
Yes, it is.
That's good
Chris.
to hear. Jim, you've been on stage with us hanging out for a little while, mate. You still there?
Yep, I am. Good morning.
Good morning, mate.
Morning.
So 3 questions. Number 1. So I think like others, I'm trying to understand how much AE to spend now versus later. Can you please share how the AE cost of Gen 2 brains may fluctuate over time, and what are the circumstances that may make them more expensive versus less expensive after subsequent epochs?
Hal, have you got this one?
Yeah, sure. So we're talking about the cost of mining Gen 2 brains. Like I said before, the cost of mining a brain is a simple calculation of the total ASTO energy generated in the production cycle divided by the number of brains available to mine within the mining cycle. And so you can work that out relatively easily and do some sort of projection on what you think the total AE generated is going to be. Did we share that Medium article, Ice? Might be worth doing that so that people can go and see what the numbers of brains available in each cycle are. Does that answer your question,
Okay,
Jim, or did I miss the?
I think so. So at a high level, we then sort of would need to speculate how much staking or liquidating people are doing of ASTO, which then influences the AE production, which then influences the AE cost per Gen 2 brain.
That would be the inputs to that would be the inputs to that equation for sure.
But A is not
Okay,
not designed to be a mechanic where people sort of miss out. It's designed to be inclusive, so it's not exhausting your ASTO or anything. It's you can carry over your ASTO from cycle to cycle. If you didn't have enough in the first one, you can jump into the second one. And there'll be future releases of mining cycles where you can participate with your ASTO energy. So we're wanting to make it as fair as possible, and not to be something designed to drain people's wallets of assets.
Okay, great. So question number 2. I was curious how independent the learning is of a squad when they're being trained. So I could imagine, for example, an agent learning that shooting the ball in the direction of the goal is more likely to result in success than shooting the ball in the opposite direction. But is that learning something that is limited to the person participating in the actions, or does the entire squad, observe these things, and so effectively everyone's kind of learning the exact same things at once, albeit how they internalize the information may differ depending on their genome matrix?
Yeah, that's a great question. That sort of gets down to the real depth of the interesting stuff we're doing with AFA in terms of the cooperative nature of putting 4 discrete reinforcement learning models into the same game space. I suppose the way you can think about it is each agent on a team of 4 is aware of their actions in the context of their teammates' success as well as their own success. So and you've got to remember that the genome matrix and the way that the mapping is applied across all genome matrices gives a natural distribution of abilities at different levels for different things. And so if one of the players within a team is blessed with the ability to shoot at a high enough power that they score quite often, the rest of the team will learn that passing to that player results in a goal more often than them taking a shot at the goal themselves, if you see what I mean. And so this is the really interesting part of the emergent strategies that you see when you have the incentive systems wrapped around a discrete team of reinforcement learning models that learn the altruistic behaviors that have the best outcomes. Does that answer what you were sort of getting at?
No, it totally does. And so maybe as a follow-on question there, how much of some of that synergistic learning is ID based? So for example, would an agent learn that, the form with brain 1, 2, 3, 4 happens to be an effective score, or are they going to be learning things that are a little bit more abstract, like I'm crappy at shooting the ball, therefore I'm better off giving it to someone else because they can't do any worse than me?
Yeah, I mean, great question. And it's all about how you reason about and balance up the amount of signal and the amount of dimensions that you expose to these models. And this is a big part of our learning over the last, so many months, as we've learned to get this thing right and balance this thing right, is getting the number of dimensions that they're learning on correct. Now, if you were to just do, the like constraints of ability that come from the genome matrix are immutable. So you could chop it right down to an ID if you wanted to, but actually, if you open it up and give signal for all of the constraints defined by that mapping over the genome matrix, then you'll find that the learning can be transferred in more interesting ways. And so yeah, the answer to that is no. It'll be more than just ID based. There's more dimensions that we feed in to help them to understand the characteristics, the abstract characteristics of players that have certain abilities in certain areas.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, this is really interesting piece to fine tune, because if you go too wide, then it takes a lot of time to train a model. The more inputs that you have in there, the more data it's got to search through, the more complex that model becomes. So it's about finding that optimum point of diversity and of approaches to solving a problem, and not making it prohibitive to actually train the models. Because if you put in all the inputs in the world, then these things become extremely large and might not necessarily do the thing that you're wanting it to do. So it's an interesting balance to gamify, for sure.
Yeah, great. And actually, that's a great segue, I think, to my third question, because one of the benefits of, I guess, having some very broad and deep learning is I could imagine it dramatically enhancing the value of splicing, because you wouldn't have to spend an exhaustive amount of time training an extraordinarily broad and extraordinarily deep model if it's already trained. But also, I think, as was discussed earlier, it sounds like, figuring out splicing is going to be pretty complicated and therefore may take a healthy amount of time to sort of figure out. So I guess going back to some of the more like near and medium term differentiators between Gen 1 and Gen 2 brains, you sort of mentioned early access is sort of an easy value proposition of Genesis over Gen 2. If splicing's still on the back burner for a little bit, can you speak more to sort of differentiators of Gen 1 and Gen 2 in the medium term, if any?
Yeah, I mean, just to make it clear, splicing is not on the back burner. It's something that we're leaning into at a research level to make sure that we get it balanced right. And we understand sort of what the combination space and the different sort of levers we have to pull with splicing are really well. But the sort of research piece, that means that we've got to take our time and put the DD into understanding the widespread impact, is the fact that we've got multiple games and multiple game spaces that interpret these brains in different ways. And so splicing is fascinating, and the protocol has been designed for that from the ground up. But the way that we provide and the way that we put the way that we provide that functionality and put the constraints around it is really important for the balance of these assets, the ecosystem, and so on. It's certainly not on the back burner, though. It's something that we're actively working on.
Okay. So first, apologies for declaring a timing there. Certainly wasn't my intention. And two, thank you for answering all my questions.
No
Awesome
problem.
questions,
Thanks, mate.
man. Thank you.
Yeah, those were some great questions, Ajam. Thank you very much. Muke, welcome to the stage, my friend. How are you?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. I have just a couple of questions. First of all, it sounded like you would benefit by having a lot of AE and then developing a strategy over time as you mine different areas of the map. If you are like me and you only have about a box worth of Asto put into this, and I think get one brain. Is there any point in developing a strategy at all, or is it just like just press a random button and go?
There's a strategy there, and it might take some coordination with the community. I think. I think it's probably worthwhile with talking to people and seeing what's going on and where people are finding things. It's only going to benefit everyone if they sort of share information on stuff to refine the location of things.
Cool. All right.
So I think I'm going to very highly encourage jumping on the Discord and talking together about what you found and where it is.
Yeah, cool. Can we get a dedicated channel for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Isaac.
Awesome. Yeah.
Consider it done. Make it happen.
Nice. Secondly, so just from what I was hearing about the how training broadly causes perhaps outcomes that you didn't expect, or so I'm just thinking about training say like in world kind of agents to be kind of autonomous like actors. So I'm thinking like putting a brain in a seeker and giving them directives to go and like harvest stuff or like do random stuff. I mean, is that kind of something that you guys see as a realistic outcome?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And it's something that we're developing. Yep.
Sweet. So, and I guess with all of those, like with all that nuance, I'm seeing like why splicing could be so crucial, because I asked in the seeker chat, like, team, tell me why I should be stacking seekers because go, and I'm thinking like something like that. You've just got a bunch of you've trained one seeker and you've got it like doing this thing perfectly, and you're like, that took a really long time to get it there, and then you can splice them and throw them in like 20 other seekers and have them go off and do their thing. Is that kind of am I on the right track there?
Yeah, you might be interested at the mutations and variations that you get through splicing as well, which might help you find a new optimum or whatever. But the other thing that's quite interesting that we tried to touch on in the text-based technical AMA that we did was the difference between monolithic and composite capabilities, and how the way that David and I and the team designed this from the beginning was with that idea of being able to compose capabilities together to be able to get interesting abilities within sort of less defined problem spaces, like you're describing, this sort of open world scenario where you might be sending a seeker off to go and yield some resource or something, and the idea that you can start to build up composite capabilities within these agents so that they can take on multiple tasks. And you have to remember that each brain can be trained to do multiple things and solve in multiple problem spaces, and you can have multiple memory trees attached to that brain. And so you could compose quite an interesting set of capabilities within a seeker, for example, to do some interesting things. And one of the examples that I give people when we're talking about this is like the idea of a card shop within an a RPG or a big MMO, and you're composing a few capabilities there, right? You're composing a locomotion capability, you're composing a conversational capability, and you're composing a capability to play a particular game, say, I don't know, Texas Hold'em or something. And by putting those together and putting some coordination model over the top of them, you can then take that composite capability, and it can navigate the world, identify how it needs to navigate to engage with people conversationally, and learn how to goad people into playing it, and then extract their ETH through a game of Hold'em. And that's just a contrived example, but maybe it shows sort of how far down the track we are with the thinking around the sorts of scenarios that you're talking about.
Yep. And one of the other benefits of splicing is the, I guess, genetic engineering side of it. If you splice together certain brains, you might get a brain that's stronger in a certain area than another one, and you might specifically bring together two brains in order to do that. So you can train, if you get really good at splicing, you can make Gen 2 brains that are not only have the memories of their parents, but are also specifically genetically engineered to play those games really well.
Yeah, got it.
By
Awesome.
having, by knowing where you want the strong attributes to be.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess we'll have we'll have like a brain kind of dating app where we can maybe something just beyond dating. But yeah, all right, cool. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks.
That's me. Yeah.
Thanks,
Cool
heaps.
questions, Mute. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome to the stage, Zeptat. Are you there?
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Oh, great. I had a couple questions, but actually just kind of hopping on from the splicing. When you splice a brain, because there would be sort of like a tendering of brains, are you creating two brains or is it just one brain? Because I'm wondering, if you're splicing it, if it's two brains and there's kind of mutual incentive. If it's one brain, I'm just wondering like who would end up getting that brain.
So I think the current mechanic is designed so that you bring two brains together and you produce one brain.
Okay.
We haven't really gone down the path of looking at a Tinder for brains yet internally, but being that it's an open protocol, anybody can build that functionality. It doesn't have to be something that's a good thing about this Web3 building and open source building is that people can take the stuff that we've built for the protocol open source and then build on top of that and build out functionality like that. So if somebody wanted to build a brain Tinder, we need to come up with a term for that, then they would 100% support them doing that.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. Obviously, the alphafarm.io site is amazing. Yeah. So more tools like that would be awesome.
Yeah, when Alpha Farm Tinder.
So I guess my question is sort of related to the APHA attributes, but then also, I guess, the genome matrices. And I'm wondering, do you guys have a finalized list now of attributes for sort of like skills, whether it's like speed or like shooting power or like the superhero powers? Has that all been finalized, or is that still?
So we wouldn't want to share. We wouldn't want to share any details about that until we actually kick off the community engagement, right, David? Like the process of defining those mappings is a community collaborative process, and so we'd want to make sure that we timed all of that and the release of all of that information to the community around that, I would say. No, David?
Yes, but one thing I did want to say was that I wanted to have that that community participation go really wide with the attributes on that, and so that we can start putting in sort of placeholders. The community start putting placeholders with context of what other games might use as well alongside it. So we can all together make more informed decisions about where those things should land. Like whether you want aggressiveness over there with strength and power, or maybe you guys have a think about it and decide actually it's probably better served in its own region over here. So I wanted to go quite wide with that mapping event.
Yeah, no, and I guess the reason for my question is I'm just wondering, like, let's say there's only 8 attributes. Is it like a case where it's likely because if you map out the genome matrices, there's 16 different quadrants. So I'm wondering if for whatever game it is, AFA or Future, if it's a case where it can only be one quadrant, or can it be a case where it's the values combined between 2, 3, 4, or could it even be like smaller sort of like sections within those quadrants that determine kind of the skill? I guess my question is just trying to value like what types of Gen 2 brains to go for, or if I were to pick up additional Gen 1 brains in areas I'm weak at, thinking about that.
So the actual where you drive it from the game for the game is the circle that you can use to take the average of the area can be as small as 1 square, or technically as large as the whole map. And that's kind of up to the game designers to decide whether they want, and that gives you a different distribution curve of attributes. If you go really small, then you'll have really high numbers and really low numbers and really peaky peaks. And your distribution curve is going to be really interesting. But if you go quite wide, then you're going to have quite a flat distribution curve, and it'll average out. So you might want that to balance the game more. And those are decisions that you have to make as you're designing the game, whether you could, that mechanic can deal with having quite high peaks, or you need it to be more average. So the actual filter region is completely adjustable.
No, it's really interesting. And I guess in the context of AFA, I mean, are you guys, because you could obviously go really granular or quite large and broad, as you described. I mean, are you recommending sort of like, combining a couple of quadrants to kind of fill out however many attributes there are, or is it just kind of whatever the community decides? It could be literally anything, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be up to the community, but we suggest using the whole genome matrix, the whole map, and try and space things out quite nicely where it makes sense. And then,
Sorry. No, so theoretically, let's say if there's like 8 attributes, community could come together and say, let's combine these 2 quadrants, and that's sort of like what makes up the effectiveness for that particular game. Or it could be like speed is what everyone cares about, and so that one will be like a very large quadrant and the other ones will be smaller.
Well, I think this idea of quadrants is a little bit arbitrary. I don't think we have an official definition of quadrants. So it's actually you can make it actually 1 square, just 1 data point if you want. I don't think we're actually taking quadrants into consideration. Is that right, Hal?
I think that the way to think about this is that, and it's a great question, is that you, depending on what the game is you're designing for, a level of complexity and a level of data points that or attributes, if you will, that you take from the genome matrix will be appropriate or not. And for the more complex games, you might go for more abstract attributes that then you write functions that deduce from multiple abstract attributes to get a very specific concrete ability. But for AFA, we're definitely steering towards the more simple end of the spectrum. If you go really wide and think about the most complicated things you could possibly do with it, AFA is definitely more towards a simple end, because that's what it is. It's a simple AI gamification experience. But with that said, we really want to engage with the community to find the balance and find all the bits that we haven't discovered and thought about through that process to make sure that we land on something that's really representative of what we all see. But yeah, what you're touching on there is for the more complex game designs and use cases, you absolutely can have deterministic functions that deduce a particular concrete ability from multiple abstract attributes on the genome matrix, and that's something that we've played with and mapped out mathematically, and it works quite nicely.
That's really cool to think about. I think just even in more complex games, so I think that helps a lot for my own understanding and hopefully others. Yeah, so I guess my last question. Obviously I'm a big fan of Altered State Machine, and from what I've noticed, the team and kind of the different members all just seem to be like really kind of quality, strong people. And so I was compared to other NFT communities, it seems like you guys are quite a bit larger, and but also seem to have like a fun culture. And so I was just wondering if that's something that you guys could talk about. What is kind of the ASM culture like, and how do you guys think about I guess hiring new people and kind of having sort of a fun work environment?
Yeah, good question. Thanks for that. So I think the team's probably nearing about 80 people now. Is that right, Hal?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Sounds somewhere around that. And it's grown quite quickly, and maintaining a culture as a company grows is a bit of a challenge, especially we started this company in the middle of lockdown here in New Zealand, and I hadn't met a good portion of my people who joined the company until we came out of lockdown and we had a Christmas party last year, and we haven't met them in person. We're just over Zoom, so it's been an interesting challenge on all fronts, being remote first and trying to maintain a good culture. But when me and Hal and Phil and Aaron sat down when we were thinking about designing this company, one of the first things we said is hire good people. That's the first requirement, is to the way that we design the culture is around making a good, interesting, fun, challenging work environment. Hal's really big on avoiding burnout of engineers, because that's something that can happen with a startup pretty quickly, and making sure that we, as much as we can, maintain good, healthy working practices. And then recently we've got in a new office and a bit of a collaboration space where everybody can come in and hang out together and collaborate together, and work on things, which is helping a lot. And the other piece is we're not about timing bums on seats. We're about outcomes. So as far as possible, you can work within the whatever working hours you want. If things can be done asynchronously, then plan your work around your life rather than the other way around. And I think that's had some benefits. But I can drivel all day along about how I think culture is, but it's really up to the people who work here and whether they're enjoying it. And I'm always here to receive feedback and and try and improve it in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, I love this question, Zepta, because it's meta, but it's so important. And I won't go on about it too much, but I'll just bring up two things that I think is really important here. One is just having a vision that we all care about and are excited about, and having all our values aligned around that vision makes things easy and exciting. And when things are exciting, it's it's not a chore anymore. And I feel that from everybody here that we're excited about what we're doing. We're excited about the vision and the possibilities, as well as feeling responsible for sort of where we are in time and the technologies and the problems that we're dealing with this massive uptick in what's happening with data and technology, right? But the second thing, which is really important about our culture, is we're all ready to raise our hand and go, sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about. And I'm really proud of this within our team, actually, because we're working across an extremely broad number of technical spaces that go very deep, each one in their own right. And having the culture where people feel comfortable to raise their hand and go, sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you explain that to me? Is really important. And the culture of humility, continual learning, and a growth mindset is one of the reasons why A, everybody keeps enjoying what they're doing and growing, and B, we succeed because people are not sitting in the corner pretending they understood everything that, Dr. Alex just told us about, the ways that reinforcement learning models are going to start interacting when we tweak these bits and pieces, for example. So yeah, growth mindset and humility and the fact we're all going to be eternally learning is a big part of our culture.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, I think that once some of these games start to come out, you guys are going to be able to get, just continue to get really amazing people. And I'm really looking forward to the Gen 2 mining process. So thanks guys, and I'll hop off.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for the questions.
Great. Yeah, great
Thank you,
questions at that.
Yeah, thanks, mate. And I'll drivel on for you for a bit, David. And personally, it's been such a great atmosphere to be introduced to. Like everyone I've met, it's been so kind and warm, and really good at getting stuff done. But we really do enjoy the process. So thank you for that. Honestly, been a great time.
Thanks, Ray.
All right, Fluffy Kiwi, can you hear me?
Sure can. Thanks, guys, for holding this AMA.
All good.
So my question actually leads on a little bit from Zap Darts. I'm quite interested to know what you guys think about statements by Ray Kurzweil and Elon Musk in regards to the future of AI, and in terms of the attributes that we choose as a community in regards to the genome matrix, how it might impact AI 50 years from now. Like Ray and Elon sort of have some questions about where it might go, and just like you mentioned, David, whether the community wants aggressive brains, and it's like, well, if you choose that, how's that going to impact AI in the future? What do you guys?
This is a great lead on from the culture question, actually, because it really starts to lean into what the vision is. And when you start to sort of listen to some of those less optimistic angles on how AI is going to affect us, it makes you realize how important it is for us to think about the democratization of AI and how we need to start thinking about how the value of data is flowing around the world and how the decisions about how AI is being applied and how transparent the process of creating AI that's becoming part of our everyday infrastructure is. And I just touched on responsibility before, and that's part of our culture is a feeling of responsibility to put our minds to some of these hard questions and problem spaces, because we are at an amazing inflection point and an amazing chemical reaction, if you will, if you'll take that analogy of different technologies emerging at this point in the inflection of our technological history. And it really is a big responsibility to bear when you look at the opportunity we have with how data, compute, access to compute, cryptography, and AI, and how these fields are converging, and that responsibility to make sure that we are setting ourselves up and building the infrastructure for an equitable and democratized flow of the value of data through our everyday lives is a massive part of our identity.
Yeah, and when it comes to deciding on some of the attributes, do you factor in love or empathy, or take away anything that could lead to negative?
Just to be clear, when we're mapping the genome matrix as a community, we're mapping it for a very specific use case. And so I'm an absolute believer in the butterfly effect and the compounding, effect of our decisions and actions. So I think we do have to think about everything through that responsibility lens, but we also have to think about the way that we're, drawing a boundary around these decisions. And so mapping AFA, hopefully, will be bounded correctly and not have a knock-on impact on how AI decides to, rule on other dimensions of our reality and future.
Yeah, but and things like aggressiveness. So when we're talking about that in context of AFA, is more about whether you have an aggressive play style, not a adversarial, or not a violent play style, but whether you'll take risky shots as opposed to stay back and defend.
Strategically aggressive is what you mean there, right?
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and those flow-on effects, they are important, because you can't predict the future, but what you can do is at least think of things in context of how they might affect things later down the track.
Yeah,
and now we're seeing technology being so creative in a way that really is starting to impact us, and the role of creativity in the direction that we take on many dimensions of our journey is so massive that technology taking a key role in the creation of artistic outputs, I think, is a really interesting place to sort of transpose that question to, because creative works have driven our technological outcomes through history, if you look, and now we've got technology feeding back into the creative process. The first sci-fi that I watched that has been where the screenplay has been written by an AI is going to be an interesting moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely exciting being part of one of what I think is one of the most important industries and one of the biggest changes that we're going to go through as a culture. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Love the questions.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Off to the state, Julino, welcome to the stage.
Hello, thank you.
Yo, what's up, bro?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty
good. A couple of philosophical questions there to follow.
I love them. Yeah, we need more of those.
Back down on the practical level. The first one is hopefully quite easy. The AE that we can spend. Wait, how do I want to answer this? Can we spend AE that we're going to accumulate in the next phase on the mining cycle 1? So, for example, a couple of days' time, I've blasted all my AE and bought all my Gen 2 brains and mined them. I've got none left, but I'm still accumulating in phase 2. Can I spend that as I earn it, or is that ring-fenced, and do I need to wait till the end of the 60-day cycle?
That sounds like a Hal question.
Yeah, sure. My understanding is that you can only spend the ASTO energy that's accumulated in the previous production cycle. That's my understanding of it based on the code. So we'll go with that, but I will double check that and we'll get it up in text if I've made an error there.
I can confirm
It's
that
kind
is
of
correct.
Thanks, Ice.
cool. That's what I was expecting. Cool. Just wanted to confirm. Another question was, David, you mentioned you've been testing the Gen 2 mining. Do you have a favorite test brain that you've mined?
I don't think the testing that I've done has produced the same thing that's going to happen in production. So the team's actually what's the term for it? When it goes to production, nobody knows what the result is, not even the team of where these things are.
It's non-deterministically generative, so nobody will know. When it goes to production, everybody's waiting to see how it pans out.
Yeah, but I have seen the test designs of the brains, and if I'm going to say my favorite, there's a little region, a little region where a certain ghosty all-star is from is my favorite.
Alpha alert.
Interesting.
Thank you, David.
Ice, your plumbing skills need brushing up. Where's Dan? This is getting leaky.
Oh, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and Dan, he runs a tight ship when it comes to leaking alpha, but I subscribe to the more the merrier philosophy. So thanks for sharing, David.
Anytime.
Another question about, you mentioned a couple of months ago some maybe side cases or mini use cases that you were getting the team to get us for, putting our brains to use. Are those sort of things that have been announced, or is that
not announced, but
side cases?
Yeah, I don't think we've announced officially that, but it's looking really good. We've just got to get through Hal's delivery pipeline for production, and he's obviously been focusing. His team's been focusing on the genome mining release and AFA release and TNL and the other upcoming thing. So I'm very conscious of cramming more work in there, but the next one that I'm quite excited about is looking really good, and I'm fairly positive that we can get that into the pipeline sometime soon.
Any hints at what they are, or are they just nice little surprises that we'll eventually have?
I think I'll hint more at it as we get through that process. If I start hinting at it now, then Hal's going to be furiously typing through Slack at me.
Sweet as.
Awesome.
Last one, is there any update on the mass brain generation sort of mechanics and stuff that you were looking at? And maybe most poignantly, if you've got a deadline to sort that out?
November is our deadline on that. And yes, the architectural level conversations have been good. I would say we've got a pretty good plan in place for that now, Hal.
Yeah, I'd say so. Need to just brush it up, make sure the mechanics all click, but yeah, that's looking good.
Cool. I'm sure everyone's keen to hear what that is once you've sorted it.
Yeah, cheers.
That's it for me, thanks.
We'll do the usual, explaining and AMAs and stuff around it. And by the way, the Atom game work is looking really good too. So that's coming along nicely. For the use of the brains.
And I'm so pumped for that.
Cool.
So pumped.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
I think we might have gone over time a little bit on that.
Yeah, were you guys ready to wrap things up? There's one more person for the stage. Fam, are you with us?
Lucky last.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going across these different like Web3 AI communities, and like I'm a AI Web3 developer myself, and I'm noticing a lot of claims that aren't really being backed up. So it would be cool if like I were to give access to like a repo, or like maybe talk to one of your developers, because like for instance like how each brain can like work on different tasks that like I don't know, I'm not saying that's not possible, but how you store an NFT, or like let's say something into IPFS, or maybe you're storing a URL that's pointing to like what AWS or GCP, like that's like one, like the storage component, but there's also like the AI component. Like there's a lot of multitask learning that's available, but like I'm not sure what tech you're using, because you're saying that each brain can like let's say do multiple tasks that are completely unrelated to each other. So like those are really interesting to understand, but there's nothing really public. So I'm kind of like, left in the dark kind of here, if you get that.
Yeah, it sounds like you might have sort of joined the conversation relatively recently. There is a lot of good content out there and around, but I'm really keen to engage, on that conversation and help people to understand what this technology is and how it applies and how you can do those composite capabilities. What we were touching on earlier, I'm not sure when you jumped in, but I was pointing out that what we've been doing is dog fooding our AI gamification thesis through building games internally. And we're starting to get to a point where we can start to pull some of that learning out into the primitives and start to build some open source tooling and SDKs around those primitives. And we're really excited about that. We've been holding off some of our community and some of our potential partners and just saying, look, wait for us to get this right before you jump in and start experimenting. And so at that point, we have, a developer experience where you can jump in, you can pull something out, you can read some documentation, and you can really understand how you can interact with these primitives. And we're super excited to get there, but we didn't want to jump the gun and put some half-baked SDK out that's going to leave people confused. So my sort of feedback to you would be, go read some of the content that we have around explaining this stuff. Maybe read some of the technical AMA stuff that we did in Discord. You can go and dig that up, Ice, if you want to put a link to that, and continue to just engage with the community and start to learn sort of what we're proposing here and what we're building on top of. And then a little bit later in the year, there'll be some concrete tools that you can jump on GitHub, pull them down, have a jam, and read some documentation that will help you understand what these primitives are and how they compose in the ways that we're talking about.
Yeah, your documentation's on your main site, right? Like it's basically in your document page. Like I've read through all of that. It hasn't really changed that much since like the past 6 months. To my understanding, and maybe there's other stuff. But like, yeah, like I don't know. I feel like as a technical kind of like coming from a technical perspective, like there's a lot of hand waving stuff that hasn't really been explained to the community, and maybe most of the community doesn't care. Like maybe they care more about the experience than the actual like implementation, which is fair.
Yeah, you're talking to the person who really does care, and this is sort of what I'm pointing out is that we have held back on putting out the concrete code and documentation around how this protocol can be picked up and used externally, because we want to get it bang on, right? And we're in the process of pioneering an area here. And
okay, so cool. If you don't want to like, I'm not like, I get it. Like if you want to like, let's say you want to release a final polished product, like I kind of get that, right? I do that too. I guess it's like coming from my perspective, like my motivation is to essentially help bridge across these other AI communities, because I feel like we're kind of siloing ourselves into our own kind of niche. And so like, it would be nice to have an understanding of what you guys are doing, because like, I can see how that, like, I've probably gone through like 5 or 6 different, like, just AI communities I would work with. And then I try to find bridges between these communities. That's why I work with like Polkadot and like Cosmos, because, I'm trying to interoperate across these communities. So like, I'm just trying to help you guys too. Like, obviously I have self-interest. I want to like find a niche in the market too. But like, you know,
I think
like,
there's some really valuable. I think there's some really valuable feedback here for us, David. Is that we don't have enough good quality technical content for people that are coming new to the community to really get a handle on what the proposal is and get up to speed enough to then jump into an AMA and understand what we're talking about. So really appreciate the feedback, and maybe we should prioritize getting some higher quality technical introductory content out there. And maybe you can give us some feedback, Fam, once we've managed to do that, to see how well we've done in terms of communicating the proper technology and the actual nuts and bolts of what we're building.
Yeah, it's just, I guess it's just for me, it's just like, it looks cool. Like, at least you guys got the visual stuff down pretty not like to a pretty good thing. Like, you know, their graphics are pretty sick. It'd be nice to see how that plays in with the AI, how the SDKs, or at least if they're not like fully formalized, like how the kind of idea of it is, and then kind of like see how we can generalize this to basically any form of action space, where you can kind of like adapt it to not just, you know, and I'm sure you've thought of that already. It seems like you have through reading your docs on your website. But yeah, you know, like it just helps me help you. And like, I'm obviously like, I quit my job. I'm not really doing this for any like money, but like, you know, I'm working off of grants. So like, it's not like some VC coming through. It's more of like me just genuinely being curious, and yeah, just wanted to know more.
Yeah, I love it. Look, I feel your frustration as well, because there's so much complexity, theater and posturing and technical bullshitting around this industry, right? And you really have to sift through the projects to find the people that are really innovating. And so it's a really important indicator for us that we need to make sure that we have good technical content to introduce and grow the community on the dimensions that matter to us, because we really want to engage with people like yourself who technically capable, understand the space that we're operating in, and want to come in and contribute. Because once we get open source, like the basic primitive SDKs out in open source, it's all about community coming around and playing with it and finding out what we can do with it. And so if we don't have that strong technical introduction, then we're going to struggle with that. I think we're self-aware to a certain extent, and it's like pretty high up on my priority list over the next few months to make sure that we're formalizing and getting that in a good space. So watch the space, and please continue to give feedback as that stuff starts to roll out and that content, you start engaging with that content. Like, feel free, man, put your hand up, come and get involved in the community. One of the cool things is we do have a lot of technically capable and brilliant people in our community who could also help to explain, but we don't want to lean on those people to have to do that. We really should have a nice technical entry point. So point taken, and appreciate the effort.
Cool. Yeah, no, if they're honestly like to my extent, like I can't really help so much in the marketing. It's more so on like the technical side. I can probably contribute a bit more. I'm also like a visual artist too, so maybe like I don't think you guys need help with the visual stuff, to be honest. You guys seem to be doing pretty well there. But like yeah, you know, even if there's like any like, you know, if it's like Notion tables or any documents explaining in depth like what you're doing, like I think it just makes it transparent for like all community members, like technical, non-technical. So like, you know, they can vet you in real time and then not have to wait like, you know, a certain time into the future, like 3, 4, 6 months, whatever, a year.
Hey, look, like this is what open source is, right? And that's why getting our initial entry point into the open source is so important for us, because having those primitives on the table and having that documentation all in GitHub so that people can, you know, interact with it and start the conversation around it and start, you know, pushing PRs upstream is where we want to be. But we want to make sure that the entry point into that and the catalyst for that community is in the right shape and is well thought about, you know. So yeah, I'm excited for it, and it sounds like you are too, to some level. So I'm looking forward to interacting with you on that level when we get that stuff out. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'd be down to even have a call, or if you're not ready to release it, like just to like talk to you and your developers when you guys have bandwidth. Not sure when, but if you let me know, I'm glad to hear anything, any details.
Yeah, man, no worries. Look, reach out and we can talk about what we're doing in open source. No worries, that would be awesome.
Sounds good. Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. Unfortunately, we've gone over time, so if you have any questions you feel went unanswered, we have a channel for that. Ask us anything, so pop them in there. On a lighter note, Tinder for Brains, let's call it Splicer. Someone get the devs on the phone.
Official, it's official now.
Yeah. Also, Hal, just quickly, Dave showed his cards in regard to his Seeker's allegiance, and I'm curious, where do your loyalties lie?
Did I
Honestly,
show my cards?
Honestly, I'm operating on a God level at the moment, so we can talk about that in another dimension when we get there.
All right, perfect. Thanks, guys, for doing this, and for everyone for tuning in today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Cheers all.